I'm Jennie Gage, and this is Life Take Two.
There comes a point in every society when the mask slips and we are forced to reckon with the truth of who we are. Today feels like one of those moments. I'm reading about the Epstein files and all the political maneuvering around them, and I cannot shake the sickness that rises in my chest. The questions about who is implicated, the whisper campaigns about reputations, the strategists gaming out the fallout, all of it circles around the same obscene failure, that we live in a country that cannot or will not protect its children. We live in a culture that treats the safety of young girls like a variable in some political equation. And while the powerful argue over redactions and timing and optics, the truth is sitting in plain sight, that a child was not protected, that many children were not protected, and the people sworn to guard them were busy protecting themselves. And as these files spill out into the public square, I can already hear the excuses beginning to form in the mouths of men who have never known a consequence that they could not bribe their way out of. Some will claim a moment of weakness, some will mumble something about how the child was dressed, someone will try to paint a child as complicit in her own exploitation. The script is old, the cowardice is older. It's all bullshit. Every last syllable of it. A child is sacred, and a child deserves a world that is safe enough for them to grow inside of without fear of being hunted by those who have more power than decency.
A picture of Bill Clinton in a blue velvet dress and a pair of red heels hung just off the entryway inside of Jeffrey Epstein's Manhattan townhome. Clinton's face is playful and flirtatious, a finger pointed at the viewer. His crossed legs reveal most of his left thigh and place his pelvis in a suggestive position, blue velvet clinging tightly to his buttocks, that pair of red heels on his feet, which are dangling over the arm of a chair. Australian artist Patrina Ryan Clyde says she had no idea the painting called Parsing Bill Clinton, which was part of her master's thesis, had been purchased by Epstein. Parsing, by the way, means to scrutinize or examine in depth. So this painting is a scrutiny or an in-depth examination of Bill Clinton. Ryan Clyde has said that the blue dress was an overt reference to Monica Lewinsky's famous blue dress. When I first saw this painting, a childhood story immediately came to mind. An illustrated book my dad would sometimes read me at bedtime, the well-known Little Red Riding Hood. The painting of Clinton in Monica's blue dress conjured the illustration of the wolf in Grandma's nightgown and lace sleeping cap, smiling at Little Red right after he devoured Grandma. In my childhood version of this story, a huntsman passes by the little cottage in the woods, guts the wolf, and hangs his hide out to dry and rescues Grandma and Red. That was not the original intent of this tale. Most of us grew up with the softened Brothers Grimm version or the Little Golden Book version for others. But Charles Perrault wrote the original European version, inspired, we think, by earlier stories from China and Greece, in 1697 as a direct cautionary tale against predators at the French court. In his original version, the wolf eats Grandma, eats Little Red Riding Hood, and that's the end. There is no happy ending in the original Perrault version. The 17th century French court was a cesspool. It was an OG Epstein's Island. Perrault wrote a moral at the end of his tragic ending, which went along with the story. He said, "Children, especially young lasses, pretty, curious, and well-bred, do very wrong to listen to strangers." Perrault further explained that some wolves are gentle and charming, and that these are the most dangerous kind, reinforcing that the predator often looks like a gentleman. The painting of Clinton and the story of Little Red Riding Hood made me think about the difference in perspective held by men who harm people and the people they harm. I've been up close and personal with those differing viewpoints as a victim myself, and the wife of a wolf, and as a trusted friend aware of the victimization of others. When I first saw this painting, it also made me think of a conversation I had with my now ex-husband about his 18-year-old sugar baby that he'd had over to our luxury condo while I was just at Costco with the kids one day in my Honda Odyssey minivan in Utah. After his double life was exposed, I was stunned by the revelation of this particular rendezvous, stunned that he would text and then sneak a girl into our home. As we discussed this particular betrayal in our marriage, I asked him why he took that risk that day. Like, why was it worth it? Why couldn't you wait until another day to see this girl? And he told me, and this is a quote, she texted and told me she needed to buy diapers and formula for her kid. This sentence broke my heart as a mom of daughters. So I asked Jake, why couldn't he just sell this young woman, this girl who had aged out of the foster system and was now selling herself to men like my husband to survive, why he couldn't just sell her some money for what she needed and be compassionate, be a decent person without sneaking her into my bed. My ex-husband was in church every Sunday. This man would get up first thing in the morning and sit on the couch reading scriptures to our kids. How could he justify this particular engagement? Sex for money for diapers and formula. It seemed psychotic. First, he corrected me and told me he only had her meet him at our condo, but they didn't stay there. He instead took her down to the riverbank under the trees. He wasn't stupid enough to have someone in the condo while I was just 2 miles away at Costco. Then he said, well, she wanted to have some fun. That has stuck with me for 10 years. I personally spoke to this young woman on the phone while tracking down my ex-husband's double life after I discovered the betrayal. Her name was Jess. She had this soft, sweet voice on the phone. And I can tell you, she didn't want to have fun with my 46-year-old fat, hairy Mormon husband. She wanted to feed her baby. Period. Jess told me, by the way, that she had between 5 to 10 customers like my husband a day, every day. Jess wasn't having fun, not at all. When I later suggested to my ex-husband that she was faking her enjoyment, he blew up at me. Jess had been his sugar baby for 10 months. This young woman living in the shadows of my life, sleeping in my bed when I was away, using my towel after using my body wash in my shower, setting her earrings on my nightstand beside my framed photos of Jesus and my babies, lighting my lavender candle with a little matchbook I kept in my nightstand drawer. I always thought it was funny that my ex-husband burned that little lavender candle while I was away. It was always a little bit shorter when I came home. My ex-husband believed deeply that Jess was happy to see him, that she enjoyed being a 60-minute romp in his wife's sheets, that this beautiful young woman was happy licking up crumbs to survive. She was not, but crumbs was all she had. One day we were backpacking overnight, not for fun, but to get away from the kids so we could discuss everything that I was discovering about his double life in privacy without our kids being able to hear us. While climbing the path into the Ogden Canyon, Jake pulled up this article on his phone, just walking along, whips open his phone. He had this article ready to go. I think it was the New York Times. It was about the prevalence of men using young sex workers. He read to me stats about income levels and occupations. He said, see, this attorney with the Lamborghini has a college-age sugar baby too. You see, the man code allows men to justify their predatory attitudes and behaviors toward women, and even in some ways celebrates men being wolves. It certainly keeps those who don't celebrate the wolves silent, to where they don't speak out to protect anyone from the pack. There is this accepted understanding that it's what men do. There's nothing wrong with it. Before Epstein's Island, there was an island in Lake Michigan run by a so-called youth camp, which brought young boys there every summer. It was kind of an idyllic situation, and a lot of parents took their kids there. It later turned out that this island produced most of the illicit underage material of the 1970s. It was called Brother Paul's Children's Mission, and there are some erroneous reports going around that it was originally what was on Epstein's Island, but that is not the case. It was thousands of miles away. Here's what gets me: the widespread distribution of the material produced by Brother Paul's summer camp, the staff involved, the sheer number of people who knew this existed and did nothing There's a website called floodlit.org, owned by some of my ex-Mormon creator friends, and it tracks sex crimes committed by Mormon church leaders. The numbers and cases are astounding. I encourage you to go over to floodlit.org and click through some of their reports. The first time I ever dove into this website, my brain just about exploded. But the biggest shocker is the number of people who know about or are part of the cover-up of the crimes listed there. Here in Arizona, a young woman and her sister were abused for years while the dad confessed to the bishop for years. It was never stopped. The church has pled clergy confidentiality, said that they didn't have to tell anybody. There was not just one or two people, there were layers of people who knew about the abuse. I understand how a lone monster like Jeffrey Dahmer can do what he does in the shadows, out of sight, one man covering his tracks. My ex-husband, even he was just one guy, although he did have an accomplice who would eventually rat him out and spill some of the beans. But Jeffrey Epstein, so many people knew, so many people participated, so many people looked away, and so many people continue to look away today. I actually hate saying the phrase Epstein victims because it kind of lumps them all into this big faceless, nameless category when in fact they are individuals. They're people. They have names. These young girls who were targeted by a pack of wolves weren't just nameless faces. They were girls like Virginia Giuffre, were created at 16 while working at Mar-a-Lago, where her dad was a maintenance worker. She lived in a trailer just a couple miles away from Mar-a-Lago. She was poor and beautiful. She was groomed, trafficked internationally, photographed with a powerful man who used her. Sarah Ransom, who said Epstein's network destroyed her ability to trust and left her suicidal. Maria Farmer, who reported Epstein in the 1990s and was ignored for decades, blacklisted, stalked, threatened, and left with no career. Nadia Marcinkova, brought in as a child, passed among men like property, told she had no value outside of her exploitation. Again, another homework assignment I would encourage you, when you get done watching this video, to go ask Google for a list of the known survivors. Get to know who these young girls who are now women are. People today are still debating what happened, who knew what proof exists, but we rarely take a moment to consider the massive cost on the girls. As the government was shut down and Mike Johnson wasn't swearing in, Adelita Grijalva, who I had the incredible opportunity to talk to last week before the government reopened and she was sworn in. I do live in Tucson. She is my congresswoman here. As we zoom in on all of these other talking points, very rarely do we talk about the girls. We all know Adelita Grijalva's name right now, but do you have on your lips the names of any of the survivors? You should. And do you know some of the ways in which they were harmed? Because we see these beautiful women having press conferences and they look like they're just fine, like they went on with their lives, but they didn't. I came up with a long list of some of the harm, and I have multiple different categories. Number one, the invisible emotional aftermath of an experience like what these girls went through. Chronic anxiety, depression, panic attacks, feeling broken or permanently damaged, internalized shame, self-hatred, self-blame, persistent nightmares or flashbacks. Some of the women report still having these today. I still have nightmares and flashbacks today for some of the things that I survived. Attachment wounds that affect every future relationship. There's not a day in my relationship with my partner, Kevin, that what happened to me way back when isn't still in some ways shaping who I am and how I show up for him and for my children and for all my friends around me. Number two, long-term physical effects, self-harm scars that never fade. I can't show this on social media because my videos get taken down, but the inside of my left wrist is still covered with scars from when I tried to end my life after I was victimized. Stress-related illnesses like IBS, migraines, autoimmune flare-ups, sleep disturbances, chronic fatigue, body dysmorphia, eating disorders. These are consistent with a lot of victims. Number three, educational and life trajectory damage. Please pay attention to this one. Dropping out of school or losing academic. Some of the Epstein survivors went from being top-notch students to not going to school at all, missing out on sports, scholarships, or other activities, reduced future earning potential, distrust of authority figures, making it harder to seek help later in life. Number four, relational and sexual health consequences. Fear of intimacy, difficulty trusting partners, hypersexuality or aversion to sex, Tolerating abusive relationships because boundaries were shattered early, that was certainly my trajectory. Number 5, social and familial repercussions, isolation from friends out of shame or fear, being blamed, punished, ostracized by one's own faith community or family. This happened to a lot of Epstein's victims, being labeled dramatic, broken, or difficult because sometimes people don't know what's actually driving those behaviors. I know people looking at me as a 14-year-old girl just thought I was nuts. I was traumatized, losing entire social networks when abusers are protected. Number 6, spiritual and identity crisis, loss of faith, feeling spiritually condemned. That was certainly my life. Feeling unworthy, dirty, or cast out, especially, again, if you have any type of a faith system in your life. Questioning one's value, purpose, and place in the world. 7, economic vulnerability, therapy costs, legal costs, missed work, unstable employment, poverty cycles caused by trauma, abusers who exploit financial desperation, like Jess needing diaper. Number 8, suicidality, self-harm attempts, lifelong struggles with ideation, the permanent emotional scars that remain even when physical wounds heal. Number 9, institutional betrayal, churches covering up abuse, schools, courts, or employers refusing to protect victims, leaders showing sympathy for abusers, the devastating realization that you were disposable to the systems meant to protect you. This type of gaslighting and systemic betrayal can lead to dissociation and depression, and the whole cycle just keeps spinning around. And all of these girls experienced varying levels of what's on my list here. And here's the sad thing. The abuser moves on with his life. The victim carries the cost for decades. Everyone sees the wolf smiling. Nobody sees the girl bleeding. Also, the real cost, in my opinion, as someone who is a survivor of bad men myself, is the life these girls didn't get to live. There's a quote that I read somewhere that I don't know where I ever got it from about the songs they never sang. And I think all the time about the songs that some of my friends who were victimized never sing, the songs that these Epstein survivors never sing, the songs that selfishly I never got to sing, the careers they never had the chance to build, the confidence they never got to grow into, the children they were too traumatized to raise, the years lost to PTSD, dissociation, fear, addiction, and shame, the music classes they didn't take, the degree they couldn't finish, the safe homes they never had, the joy that was robbed from them before they even knew what adult life could look like. We can't measure the life someone doesn't live. And often this component is lost. And so we lack the sympathy to give to them because we didn't even know that we should have that sympathy because we can't see the life they didn't live, the songs they didn't sing. I almost didn't get to live mine. Again, my left wrist has that scar that's still visible today at age 51. I do tell the full story of that, by the way, to Shelise, my ex-Mormon content creator friend over on Cults to Consciousness. I will put that link in the description so that you can dive in a little bit deeper to that if you're interested. In a nutshell, after finding myself in a situation with an older boyfriend and being told by my Mormon bishop that I'd committed the sin next to murder and being shamed and guilted, I decided there was no reason for me to live. I almost wasn't here because my boyfriend wanted to have fun. He went on and was fine, like the wolf in Little Red Riding Hood with a full belly. His life was great. The cost to 14-year-old me was invisible to everyone else around me. I lived in daily agony, hating myself, pulling my hair out, dabbling in an eating disorder. I cried myself to sleep at night for months. I never got over it. I was still talking about this in therapy like 4 months ago. 2 weeks ago, Kevin and I went to my stepdaughter's end of the season volleyball game. I watched students of all ages filter in and out of the high school gymnasium. First, like all the freshmen came in, skinny boys with braces and girls like arms locked, walking in together, big smiles on all of their faces. Then the juniors came and went, and then finally the seniors for that very last game of the season. I don't know why that being in high school situations always triggers me, literally still today. But sitting there on the bleachers next to Kev, I pictured myself as a 14-year-old girl battling anxiety and depression as a result of an incident too big to handle, without help, without a good therapist, without even a friend to talk to about any of it all, being told by my bishop that I was doomed to hell. Friends, teachers, my cheerleading coach, neighbors, they didn't see the wounds that I carried as a result of the harm that guy did to me. They all thought I was fine because I often had a smile on my face. I showed up at school every day, got good grades, had a job at the Safeway store in the corner. Emotional damage doesn't have value. People don't see it. It's immeasurable and invisible. Nobody sees the cost, so nobody cares. And yet it's there. Because I survived and because I eventually found safety and therapy, I'm finally thriving. But I've genuinely only been okay for like 2.5 years. Now that I'm no longer being harmed or threatened, I run a small homeless nonprofit where I'm able to help 2 and sometimes a 3rd unhoused individual here in my local neighborhood. I help other women. Like I said, last week I got to talk to Adelita Grijalva before she was sworn in. I now volunteer on a senatorial campaign for Chris Volpe in Ohio, who's running for J.D. Vance's vacated seat, which has led me into a study of politics that is so rewarding and so fulfilling. I run a small business here in my hometown and help other local small businesses to thrive. I am a mom. I am a grandma. I got lucky to live long enough to find happiness and love on the other side of the harm done to me. And that's what I want for every girl, every Jess, every Virginia, every terrified 14-year-old version of me. And I want to prevent this from happening to other people. And that doesn't come unless we tell their stories and understand the harm and stop it from happening to others and hold accountable the predators that are still out there. We need to get the wolves the hell out of our society. We need to recognize the unseen harm. We need to release the full Epstein files. We need to prosecute the predators and lock them all up. We need harsher sentences for offenders. And above all, we need to build a world where young girls don't have to take money from creeps, where they can take care of themselves, where they don't have to sell their bodies to survive. Our daughters should never be for sale. Here's the truth we don't want to look at. As long as we keep pretending wolves are rare, nothing changes. They're not rare. They are supported. They are protected. They are everywhere powerful men gather. They're all sitting there smirking in the shadows, confident that nobody will ever hold them accountable. And rarely do we. I think it's time to start. We can end that. We can shine light into every corner they hide in. We can believe victims. We can demand transparency. We can vote out all of the men and women who cover for abusers. We can build a world where girls grow up safe, strong, and free. A world where nobody ever mistakes that wolf for grandma again. Because the next generation, in my opinion, deserves more than survival. They deserve the full life they were meant to live. And we will fight like hell until they get that life. Do you know what bothers me the most about this painting of Bill Clinton? The hordes of people who saw it. Powerful men and women coming into the parties in the Epstein mansion. They saw this painting of a powerful man and the dress of a young intern whose life was destroyed by this encounter with this president. And they found it amusing. Wolf's got to eat, right? Those bastards are still out there and they terrify me. Where's our huntsman, ready to take on the predators and protect the victims, both past and future? I hope that one of those huntsmen is Adelita Grijalva. I hope that another one of those huntsmen, I hope that they are able to meet and connect and ally themselves, is Marjorie Taylor Greene. Marjorie, I ask you to break from the pack and do the right thing to protect the victims. Where are the rest of the senators and prosecutors and rich friends ready to stand up and hold the perps accountable? There's very little that I can do sitting here in my studio in Tucson, Arizona, but there are people who can do a lot. Our daughters should never be for sale. Period. I will be hanging out in the comments, and I would encourage all of you, once again, to get off of this video and go Google a list of the survivors of Jeffrey Epstein. Let's honor their journey and support them in that cause by making sure that this doesn't happen to another generation of young girls. Thanks, everybody.